Well, welcome to the Called Collective, where we're equipping the next generation of ministry leaders. I am Bryn Beyer, and I work in the School of Theology and Ministry here at Indiana Wesleyan University. This video is a follow-up for the blog, Finding Your Place in Ministry, that went live a little bit ago. So if you haven't got a chance to check out some of the resources on our blog, make sure that you do. There's a lot of good stuff there, and it's going to help equip and develop you as a future leader in the church. Today, we're going to do a deeper dive into Judges 6, into the life of Gideon. I got the opportunity to mention Gideon in that post, but I want to take a deeper look at some of the lessons that we learn from him in Scripture. So go ahead and start turning to Judges chapter 6. A couple years ago, I was at a youth camp for young adults where they have this thing called the giant swing. Now, if you are not familiar with the giant swing, it's not like the ones at the park at all. It's essentially this huge telephone pole, and they strap you into a full body harness, hike you up to the top with a cord. And once you get to the top, you yank that cord and it swings you out, and in this case, it swung us out right over the face of a cliff. As I was getting ready, the first thing, as I see this, I'm like, yes, let's do it. And then, as they're strapping me into the harness, all of a sudden, these feelings of anxiety, a little bit of fear, I know I'm going to do it either way, but I'm recognizing all of these emotions inside of me. As one of the people was helping me get strapped in, he turned to me and he asked, "Are you afraid?" And of course I said, no, I'm good. And he told me something that I'll never forget. He said, when I see people come and do the swing, what makes an impact for me is when they're scared, but they step out and they do it anyway. I think that Gideon's story reflects this. So let's go ahead and jump in to Judges chapter 6. I'm going to be reading from the New Living Translation, if you have access to that on your phone or app. Then the angel of the Lord came and sat beneath the tree at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash of the clan of Abiezer. Gideon, son of Joash, was threshing wheat at the bottom of a winepress to hide the grain from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, "Mighty hero, the Lord is with you." "Sir," Gideon replied, "if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? And where are all the miracles our ancestors told us about? Didn't they say, 'The Lord has brought us up out of Egypt'? But now the Lord has abandoned us and handed us over to the Midianites." Then the Lord turned to him and said, "Go with the strength you have and rescue Israel from the Midianites. I am sending you." One of the things that I love is that God consistently uses people who we can both learn from and aspire to be like. Gideon makes his share of mistakes. Over and over again, he questions God. He's not sure what to do. He tests God with a fleece. He's not confident in what God has called him to, but yet we see God greet him as a mighty hero of Israel. God saw who Gideon was becoming and called him into that, not as the person and the man that he was at that time. In the same way, God sees us as who we're becoming. He knows the end game, even when we don't see it ourselves. So as we move forward in ministry, as we pursue to become more like Christ, we're becoming more like Jesus, but we're also becoming more like the person, like the man or woman that God has created us to be. Continuing with the story of Gideon, after he tests the Lord and he asks for these signs, he ends up following through. And with every step of questioning, with every mismove on Gideon's part, we also see clear obedience. Gideon doesn't just live in his fear. He processes through the emotions in the moment, and then he steps boldly into what God has called him to. Maybe boldly is a strong word, but nonetheless, he's moving forward into what God is asking him to do. I think from Gideon's life, there are two things that God really calls us to. First is to engage the voice of God, whatever that looks like for you, whether it's in spending time in His Word, His Bible, whether that's listening to worship, journaling prayers, spending time in prayer with community, going to church. All of those things build on our relationship with God and help us to better engage His voice and step into what He's calling us to in life and in ministry, whether we know where we're going in the end or whether we don't. The second thing is that we have to obey God's voice. Gideon, even in the midst of fear, always stepped out in obedience. As God is revealing to you what His plans are for you in ministry in these next years, as you pursue education and experience and equipping for His calling, you might not know the full picture at the beginning. You're probably going to get bits and pieces as you go. So lean into where God is calling you, trust in His master plan, and obey Him step by step, because it's through our faithful steps of obedience that God calls us into greater things and that we're better equipped to step into His call on our lives. And what is going to be a defining feature of your faith and your ministry is obedience in the midst of fear and in the midst of uncertainty. So if you are stepping into ministry, if you're looking to answer this call that God has on your life, but you don't know where you're going and you're not sure what that looks like, know first that you're not alone, that there are many who've gone before you and who have struggled with getting clarity on God's call for them. But also know that it's what you do now that matters, and how you invest in your relationship with God now is going to set you up for success in what God calls you to later. And I'm defining success not as fame and riches, but as obedience to what God is calling you to faithfulness in stepping out and following Him piece by piece. Thank you guys for tuning in to this Called Collective Tidbit. God bless you, and I hope you have a wonderful week.